I'll introduce the others as she gets ready. The Chairman, Africa Fine Coffees Association, Kenneth Barigye, please join the gentlemen on stage. Madam Martha Wandera, who is the Managing Director of Kimco Coffee Limited, please join the gentlemen on stage. And Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance, Tony Mugoya, please join these people on the table. Is Brenda on? Joseph Nkandu from New Cafe, please join them on the table. I think we've lost Brenda. So, Dr. Frederick, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Director of the Day. I would like to recognize all of you in your respective capacities. And I say all protocol observed. Thank you, Dr. Iyamulemye, for that presentation that you have made. That's a good overview. And I think it helps to put the discussion here in a good perspective. Having my position as Africa Coffee Ambassador, I know that the discussions that have been going on at the Africa level, which the MD talked about, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, one of the things that is coming out of that is helping the member states to address the access to the market so that we as African producers can have the opportunity of presenting our coffee in this market. The statistics show that the coffee produced in Africa, the volume of coffee produced in Africa is also equal to the coffee consumed in Africa. If you put together the producing countries and the consuming countries in Africa, which is a great opportunity for us. And I would like to ask Mr. Tony Mugoya, you know, given the opportunities that we have, what do you think, in your opinion, are the strategies that should be in place or which are there to develop the coffee subsector for industrialization? Because we must industrialize in order for us to take advantage of the market opportunities.
Thank you very much. Chairman of the panel. I am Tony Mugoya, Executive Director, Uganda Coffee Farmers Alliance. Yeah, it's very important that we industrialize as Africa, and it's good that the African Union strategy, the Uganda Vision 2040, the NDPs, all prioritize industrialization as a key for growth in Africa. Coming to the coffee sector, we need to look at how do we industrialize holistically. And the best way to do it is by ensuring that we have a strong foundation for industrialization. So I want to promote the approach of the value options. You know, we talk about value addition, but where does the value start from? So there are 5 value options. The first one is creating value. How do you create value in coffee? Number 1, improved breeds. Number 2, good agricultural practices. That is a starting point. If you want to add value in coffee, start at the research and farmer level. So creating value is number 1. Number 2 is retaining value. How do we, as farmers, as Ugandans, as producers, retain value? You retain value by taking up more value chain roles. You don't just restrict yourself to growing coffee. You have to process coffee. You have to get involved in the logistics, in the trading of coffee. So actually, I'm very happy with this discussion because it has expanded the opportunities of retaining value by we as a coffee country. So value retention, which is number 2, is by own service delivery, doing things yourself. Number 3 is now adding value. Adding value is popularly restricted to processing. And under processing, we have primary processing, secondary processing, and tertiary processing. So even what we are discussing, roasting, soluble plants, that falls under value addition. Then the next point, number 4, the 4th value option is distributing value. How do you distribute value to women, to youth? How do you involve them? I think history shows that a family approach, a household approach, has been more effective in promoting rural development than when you focus only on men as a gender. Then the 5th and last value option is generating value. How do you generate value? We're in the coffee industry. If you look at the Brazilian coffee exports, there's a big segment on coffee extracts. We are seeing an increasing segment on other products, which are not coffee that is consumed directly. Things like cascaras and others. Even myself, I have a proposal I'll be coming to Mr. Managing Director, how we can export other coffee products rather than beans, because there's a market for them. So we need to generate new value chains or new value areas in coffee. So those are the 5 value options that we need to promote equally. So as we talk of adding value, we should talk about creating value, retaining value, distributing value, generating value. So how do we adopt a correct value addition approach? For me, I'm a scientist. I believe in the studies. We should do a thorough market research or survey. We should do feasibility studies. If we're going to invest so much, what is the return, the expected return on investment? What is the payback period? I think this information, if shared widely, will help to popularize all value addition initiatives. We want to see those feasibility studies. We want to see the market research, We also need to look at the in-house capacity. I'm happy the managing director has told us that there are 48 registered roasters. Yes, they are roasting some coffee. We also know there's no soluble coffee plant in Uganda. How do we support these 48 to scale up their production? Because they have some experience. They have some information they have gathered along the years in this area of business. So I think let's support all coffee people who want to add value so that as a country, we have more players, more participants benefiting from the incentives that exist. Then we also need to address the issue of barriers. This is an issue that we should not underlook. We know, for example, that coffee producing countries, even those like Brazil, I'm talking about Colombia, India, Vietnam, all of them, they are producing coffee. They have invested, some of them, in soluble plants, but they are still facing tariff and non-tariff barriers. What do we learn from these guys? How have they overcome those tariff and non-tariff barriers? Where are the studies on this? Where is the information? How can we learn from them so that we perform better? The market is there, but the truth is there are tariff and non-tariff barriers outside our borders. Then the other point to look at is the regional experience. The managing director has told us here rightly that Ethiopia, they consume over 50% of their coffee. Over 4 million bags are consumed locally. I was asking my brother, Joseph Kandu, this morning, that what is the economic impact of that domestic consumption on the Ethiopian economy? Yeah? They are consuming 4 million bags in Ethiopia. What is the economic benefit overall for the Ethiopian economy? Instead, we've seen the Ethiopian government actually promoting export of high-grade green beans to get forex. So we need to do a proper economic analysis of this. Of course, it's important to roast, to do import substitution. Those who know economics, there's no reason why in the Ugandan market we should be buying Nescafe and all these things from UK, and other places when this is a home of coffee. So import substitution is very important. However, we need to look at the overall economic benefit of these investments that we are making. The other regional experience we can learn from is from Tanzania. We know that they have they have two plants, soluble plants, Tanika and Amir Hamza. Mr. Chairman, I remember we were with you in Nairobi, I think before COVID, when I and Amir made a presentation, and I was asking him, how do you set up a soluble plant? Where do you get your money? How much money did you sink in? What is your market? What are the options, opportunities for growth? What is your production capacity? Because what we want to do has been done before. It has been done. We are not the first country to think about a soluble plant. There are people who've done it, who are doing it. Let's learn from them and do better. As I conclude, as farmers, we believe in price transparency. Price transparency. That means I should be able to sell my coffee to the highest bidder. That must be preserved. That right, it is a right, an economic right, must be preserved. I must sell coffee to the highest bidder that I can get. The other issue is we want a free market. Uganda is a free market economy. We believe and hope that we shall retain this free market economy. I always tell the cooperatives I work with that if middlemen are out-competing you in terms of offering better prices than you as cooperatives, it means you're inefficient. I believe in competition. Competition is very good because those who are inefficient, they die out. You cannot perform if you're inefficient. But if you are innovative, if you're efficient, then you are able to compete in the market. So I believe that all coffee players should be able to buy coffee depending on their competitiveness. For us, as farmers, we shall give coffee to anybody, anyone who offers the highest price. That is what we want. So the more people in the market, the more competition, the better for us. If you give us a high price, why not? If you give us a low price, we run away from you. We can also export directly. Yeah? Farmers are processing, my brother here and others. They are roasting. We can do all these things. Lastly, Chairman,
thank you.
I also hope that these incentives will be available to all players in the Ugandan coffee industry. I was happy when I think the PS yesterday said, incentives are there for all coffee people. So I will request for more information from the government agencies. Maybe we need to know how can farmers and others access these good incentives that promote industrialization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mugoya. I think you've spoken passionately representing the farmers. In an earlier presentation by the senior economist from the World Bank, who told us that 7 out of 10 jobs created in the economy are in micro enterprises, which means if we're looking at employment, if we're looking at economic transformation, the role of small and medium enterprises is very, very critical. Also talked about agro-processing accounting for 2/3 of Uganda's manufacturing in the agri-business sector. So I wanted to ask Mrs. Wandera, because you are in this business, in one of your capacities, what do you think we need to do to unlock the potential in coffee processing and value addition especially if we are looking at transformation, economic transformation in Uganda. What do you think we need to do?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Speakers like you've heard, my name is Martha Nalubega Wandera, and I am a coffee farmer. I do coffee processing, primary processing. I roast and pack coffee under the brand Kimco Coffee. And we are based in Lwengo district. And I'm very passionate about working with women and the youth. Yes, value addition is the topic of the day today. And we are here to really tease out ways in which we can unlock the potential for coffee processing and value addition. And from the previous speakers, just like the MD has mentioned, there are quite a number of ways in which this can be done, and I want to add my voice to that. But I also want to add to the previous speaker and emphasize that when we are thinking about value addition, we need to think about both on the farm and off the farm activities. And for me, I think that is really key and timely for UCDA, and especially the Coffee Act of 2021, which emphasizes the regulation of both on the farm and off the farm activities. And I want us to really focus on that. I do believe that actually if we want to unlock the potential, we really need to think about regulating right from on the farm. What is being planted? What kind of planting materials are we starting with? Because value really has to start at that point. So it's important that UCDA takes charge, and I know that the regulations are coming, and very soon, once they come, we should be able to see implementation of strongly regulating and supervising closely the planting materials. And for the people in the house, if you're farmers, please be sure that you're getting planting materials only from those nursery operators that are accredited by UCDA, because that's the only way you can tell that you're actually adding value the right way, by going to those rightful suppliers. So that's one way. The other way, again, which relates to regulation for me, is extension services. I think it's really important that government pays attention to extension services as well as technical services. Because if our farmers don't know what to do, if our farmers are far away from, these services, then they won't do the right thing. They won't be able to add value. So I'm calling upon any government officials in here, out there who are listening to us, if there is a way the budget of extension services and technical services can be revamped, because all this will go to a waste if we don't have extension workers reaching out to the farmers. Because I know right now there are very few extension service providers. You find an extension person has a huge number of farmers. And indeed, when you speak to some of the farmers, they'll tell you they've never seen this extension work. And it's not their problem, but they have such huge areas to reach out to. If only we could put more money into extension services such that they are able to reach out to these farmers and, advise them on what to do right on the farm, we'll be able to unlock really the potential in value addition. The other way would be making planting materials, again, among the farm activities, readily accessible to the farmers, okay? Just like the MD said, if research is put into this work, but also make sure that budgets support planting materials that farmers can access. That will also help us see the value much improved. Adding to that, I think it's also important to make sure that these farmers, because when you think about our farmers, they are scattered all over. They are all in their different places. When I think about the particular farmers that I work with, some are in Lwengo, others are in Sembabule, Masaka, name it. If there was a way to organize those farmers and get them in one place, it would be much easier to have these farmers, access the trainings, access the information, access the planting materials, the fertilizers, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's important to get these farmers organized such that it's easier to get these services closer to them. And indeed, when you look at our countries that are really making it, and don't go very far, it's Rwanda, it's Kenya. The reason that they are able to add value in a way that is meaningful for the entire country is because they've been able to organize these farmers and have these farmers access this information in an easier way. My other recommendation, which I'm really, really passionate about, is the issue of common user facilities. Because it's going to be very few farmers who are going to afford the wet processing plants that we have seen over there. It's going to be very few farmers or even SMEs that are going to be able to come up with a package like this. It is extremely expensive to buy the equipment. So how about if we thought about common user facilities, whether it is for purposes of primary processing. We have a facility put together in a community for all farmers to come and access the services at a fee that is affordable, okay? And we have these facilities in different locations. Say in Lwengo, it would be easier to give the farmers the information. It would be easier for the farmers to live up to the expected quality, because then the facility would be able to control the quality at that facility. It would be, even if it's drying beds, because that's another way of adding value. How about if we have a facility for drying beds and all farmers are bringing their coffee in this one place to dry their coffee in a way that we can, monitor the beans they have brought, monitor the way they are being processed, monitor the moisture content, and etc., etc. So I am a very big and passionate person about common user facilities. The reason we have this is because of, a common user facility. Otherwise, a small SME like Kimco would never be able to produce that, because that machinery is so expensive, like we have seen. But because we have a common user facility at Curate where we can package our coffee and have Curate take us through these trainings and make sure that the quality is controlled at that level, is in itself helping us to, add value and make a little more money. The other one, like we have had, is, I'll call it patient capital. Because we hear so much about access to finance. Indeed, there is a lot of money around, but we are talking about patient capital, which is long-term, which is low interest, which is perhaps no collateral. And I also like to think about this finance being broken down for different categories of people, say the women and the youth. How about if we had those packages for women, youth farmers, and we see ways in which they can access. And the good thing is that women and our youth are known for being very compliant and being, they pay back. There is that history. So how about if we came up with those particular facilities that are meant for those categories, of farmers, to help them, add value at the different levels of the value chain. And again, we are talking about the on the farm and off the farm The other one would be the market access.
This thing of patient capital, it's a very interesting idea. I think if we have time for you to throw more light on that, that would be quite interesting. But anyway, you finish that point.
Surely we can come back to it. The other thing is the market access. Because it's not enough for you to have a product, but then this product should have a market that is willing to buy it. And for me, when I talk about market access, it's both the local, the regional, and the international market. We just had a conversation with Chair over there about the fact that there is a lot of market internally in Africa. So how about if we engaged in, making sure that we look for this market, make the Ugandan brand known to these markets? Because I think the other disadvantage that we have, yes, we do produce one of the best coffees, and in terms of Arabica and Robusta, I know our coffees are one of the best, but when you go out there, it's not anywhere on the shelves. I usually get very jealous when I'm out there and there are two coffees that you see. It's going to be either the Rwandan coffee or the Kenyan coffee. And you're talking about Uganda as a coffee producer, and nobody knows. So if we can invest a little bit in, creating a market, creating a brand for Uganda, which all of us could have maybe a mark that distinguishes our coffee from the other coffee, that can help us, break through. As I come to the end, Mr. Chair, social inclusion, again, is very important. And for me, again, I want to focus on the women and the youth. Why do I focus on the women? In my groups, I actually mainly work with women. And I realize that the women are the ones who are offering most of the labor on the coffee farms. Okay, when you are going out to do the farm visits, it's mainly the women. When it comes to the processing at the primary level, the plant, it's only the men that show up. And yet I know that the women are, like I said earlier on, they are very passionate about what they do, they are very compliant, and most importantly, when you tell them something, particularly about quality, they will, make sure that they produce exactly what you have agreed on. So I have a suggestion. How about if we found a way of bringing out these women in a special way? Dear men in the room, I want to suggest, for purposes of value addition, how about if we got women, one, in discussing how they can get involved. I also know that there are some men that I work with that are really champions of women involvement in agriculture, in the higher levels of the value chain. We can draw on those male role models who are already converted, speak with them. But I also know that we don't, as women, we don't own land. But how about if we got with our men, they could be our husbands, our brothers, and discussed informal agreements of how, maybe you give me a share for a period of time and I grow these coffee trees. And, we too get to own and really give our whole as women, because we are very good at quality control and we are very compliant. That is something that I wanted to throw in there. Now, as I come to my real conclusion, I wanted to share some challenges that we have in here, because this is value addition, right? And really it fetches a lot. But for us to get it to this, it takes a lot. Like I said earlier on, we can't afford the processing plants. But thank God we have CURAD that has allowed us to go in for accessing the common user facility. There are also issues of packaging. The package is extremely expensive. How about if we got government to put up a facility or a processing plant for packaging materials, Because I know if the government invested in that, we would perhaps have more than the 48 that we had. Or even if I know that, or if the packaging material is locally done by the government, it will be much cheaper. So this will be less expensive and therefore more accessible, because I know one of the things we're trying to promote is local consumption, because this is very expensive and people don't want to consume coffee because it's very expensive. So if government invested in such a facility that produces packaging material, that would be good. My final one, we are not against the certifications, the UNBS, it's actually everybody should get a Q mark, because that's the only way you can prove to your consumers that what you have in here is credible, ready for consumption. But I wish we could bring down those fees a little lower for even many more, not only coffee roasters, but many more others who are packing agricultural products to be able to pack and give us a safe product. The reason I say that is I have come across some of them will be coffee producers, others will be other agriculture producers, who are running away from a Q mark, and then you're risking, you don't know what they are putting in the package. Is it safe? Nobody knows. But if you made it affordable for everybody, would probably have many people who come to acquire the quality mark and therefore be able to give us a safe product. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think those are some of the ways in which I would suggest that would help us to unlock the potential for both processing and value addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martha. Wow, you've brought in so many things. I think the MD, I hope the MD has taken note. He will have to make some comment on this, especially the common user, facilities. At some point, I will ask you to make some comment on that. And even this thing of packaging, partnership with perhaps Uganda Development Corporation and stuff like that. But now, Mr. Nkandu, you have been talking so much about coffee. You've been such an advocate. And, I remember from the 1980s and up to the 90s, Kenya invested a lot in talking about Kenya coffee. Today, people think that Kenya coffee has those very high prices because of whatever, but I know that it was a result of investment, significant investment in promotion, in branding Kenya coffee. Madam Martha has talked about the issue of branding. Mr. Mugoya also mentioned it. I think branding is so critical. If we are talking of increasing the earnings of our coffee, Uganda coffee earnings, so that farmers, the farmers that you represent around the table here, we are many farmers, the farmers that you represent, what needs to be done? How can we increase the coffee earnings, especially for these farmers? And branding is so critical. The branding of Uganda coffee in the international, in the global arena is something that needs to be taken seriously, because we talk of value addition. Value addition is good, but the people out there to sell our coffee, you need to have what we call the demand pool. People must ask for the coffee. A coffee shop in New York or London or Milan or wherever, for that person there to stock Uganda coffee, there must be people who are asking for the coffee. They come to the shop and say, do you have Uganda coffee? But why would somebody ask for Uganda coffee? It's because they would have heard about it. They would have heard, nice stories about it, and therefore they go to ask for that coffee. So for us to add value alone here does not mean that we'll capture that value out there unless we have done serious branding. How do we achieve all this, Mr. Nkandu? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for...
and Mr. Nkandu, by the way, I believe you answer part of the question. The MD will answer the other part, because, UCDA takes responsibility for this promotion and so forth. So you can do your part.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At the risk of repeating what my colleagues have stated, for me, the overarching question that we want to answer is, what is that we are doing different? Different from all that we have been doing. Are we doing anything different? That is the bottom line. Otherwise, if we continue doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, Einstein said that is insanity. And we wouldn't like it to be among the mad. And therefore, when we are talking about value addition, who is adding value? If the farmer has been getting less than 5% of the retail trade value, is he supposed to add value? So what is that should be done differently? The farmer has been selling coffee on trees, even as flowers, at best as chiboko, and leaving 95% going. Therefore, the model that needs to be deployed at the farm level, if we are to capture more at the farm and eventually at the country level, is taking ownership. Farmers must take ownership by taking responsibility to invest, by taking responsibility to integrate, and therefore the collective approach to investment by farmers is very, very important. And I call upon the audience in here, because the farm ownership model is a whole package that has been put together, and it can be even found at Mr. Google to further, read more about this. Because the farmer, by enhancing farmers' ownership to continue owning a more value-added product beyond the farm level, it enhances farmer value addition by at least 250%. Increase in value, increase in income. I think that is the starting point. And the ownership means taking care of the quality of coffee, being inclusive, being compassionate, whoever is taking leadership, in this is what is critical. 2, are we doing things different in a way that the system is working together? Or we are simply, making interventions at a particular spot in the value chain? For us to have a real transformation, we must take a systems change approach. And going deep into that, one would say, how is our education system? With the kind of skill sets that we need along the entire coffee value chain, are these part of our education system? When we are to talk about branding, is that part of our education system? If you are to follow an agricultural graduate or a student as he graduates from any of our institutions, how much in terms of branding skills does this person have. Because what I know, the student will have all the necessary farm level knowledge. And even the marketing has to do with the chiboko or parchment coffee. This is what somebody is learning. Are you capturing the real value? Can you brand parchment? Can you brand, chiboko? So a systems kind of approach, now that we have addressed policy, because policy is important, we need to address our education system. We need the application, of science in all this to ensure that at the end of the day, the brand that you are presenting is the brand that is going to be sustained on the market. And then are we addressing food safety requirements? And then where are you positioning that brand? If the market where you are positioning that brand is where food safety requirements are very critical, and for your information, colleagues, food safety standards are very subjective. However good you may have taken, compliance into consideration to be certified, but provided you are like me, positioning yourself somewhere in a market in Europe, in the US, it is not going to be perceived in the way somebody else coming from that market and is, positioning that brand in that market. And therefore, this would also seriously call for partnerships across the board. You have, and we have to have partners in those targeted markets that even if I am the one behind the scenes, somebody that is seen to be promoting is that is acceptable in that marketplace.
And by the way, when you talk of these partnerships, one of the key things in the coffee industry, in terms of positioning ourselves in the global coffee market, is relationships. So we talk of relationship coffees. And I think that's what you are, hinting on, partnerships. This is the key value addition thing. Because I remember visiting a factory about 20 years ago, in Europe, and they had coffee imported from Jamaica. They were selling it in drums, equivalent, instead of a bag, it was drums, which are wooden drums. And this guy told me that each of those he had to bid, and he paid, this factory owner paid 2,000 pounds for each of those. But you see, there's the relationship thing that was developed, and the farmers out there are not roasting their coffee to send it out, but they have built that relationship, and they are capturing that value at the final end market. 2,000 pounds for that one drum of coffee. So these partnerships are very critical. What needs to be done by Uganda to capture such value?
Yeah, in terms of these partnerships, of course, you'll have to look at traceability. But this kind of traceability, and it is at this point I want to appreciate government for having come up with a law to do with the geographical indications. So as we position ourselves, as a country, as we yearn to do branding, we need to protect ourselves first and foremost. And the way we can best protect ourselves is the application of the geographical indications law. And what we have started to do from one corner of the country is to have one, geographical area, which is Rwenzori, to be registered as a geographical indication that nobody from anywhere in the world will claim, to be the one producing and using that brand, without being part of us. And therefore, profiling and characterization of these coffees, and then ensuring that the producers are well organized in that setup, and then registered by Uganda Registration Services Bureau, and as it links up with the World Intellectual Property Organization. That is an important step. It is an assurance to your partner, whether here or abroad, that the coffee is coming from such and such a place. This is how it is produced under these environmental circumstances at such an altitude. There is a whole complete story behind the coffee that is produced, because today coffee is marketed differently. It is marketed with a story. It is more than a product. And for that matter, this is the beginning part of anchoring, our branding on our local ownership, because the geographical indications law protects to ensure local development, to capture more value coming back to the country in a particular geographical location. So that is very, very important. But I want to add that as we do all this in our farm organizations, it is quite critical that the building blocks are properly, put together. And the building blocks certainly start with the farming families. And therefore, through this, it is family coffee business and succession planning. So we need to build our house right from, the foundation that is very, very important, and going upwards. Something critical that I wouldn't like us to forget is, yes, we appreciate liberalization. We do appreciate, but this does not mean a total divestiture by government from the private sector. And therefore, for us to have real transformation, for major investments to be done, we need government on our right-hand side in a very, very strong way, whether in promotion, in marketing here and abroad, and putting in place an implementation of our own policies. If we are talking about bubu, let us see it at work. I would wish to see, government sourcing coffee for its civil servants to use in office from, from New Cafe. Where is you? Please bring the coffee from New Cafe. This is a real sign that, government itself is promoting bubu. So are we putting in implementation? Or we see different government bodies, ministries, just fighting each other. No, we don't want bubu. And another one is saying we need bubu. So we need order also amongst government entities. And as I summarize.
Yes, please. I want you to summarize so that I can ask the MD to make some comment before we close.
Yeah, as I summarize, Mr. Chairman, let us have the system work. Let us have the systems work. Let us retool those who train us, those who teach us. I talk about an espresso brew. I talk about barista skills. But the one who taught me really doesn't know anything about that. And that's where the real value is. I talk about roasting coffee, but somebody who taught me really doesn't know anything about roasted coffee. Therefore, retooling those who are already in our education system becomes very, very important. Incubation and acceleration. Incubation is quite important, especially for our young people, especially for women. This is where you are able to push an idea from scratch to something, real. And then you see something, going forward. So branding, we would like to move with the government in the marketplace. We want to see what we see others, are doing different, and we do things differently. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Nkandu. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg your indulgence. I think we need to be taking a break shortly to have lunch. But this discussion is so critical in view of what is happening right now. And I think we will ask the MD to see if another meeting can be arranged. You mentioned the roadmap and so many things to do with this. We need to discuss these things and see how can we exhaustively, probably not exhaust everything, but really cover these issues in a forum where people are not rushed. Otherwise, Mr. MD, I would like you to take the floor and make your comment on, briefly, what has been said here. And, there is the issue of the branding and how we can make Uganda coffee more competitive and so on. And it seems around the table that the issue of value addition is not just roasting, but looking at various aspects of the value chain and even capturing the value in terms of relationships with the consumers, wherever they are. Mr. MD, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and all my fellow speakers. I think we put the farmer at the center of what we are doing, but I would like, not for the discussion now, especially to Mr. Nkandu, Mr. Kofi. There has been also a debate that should farmers actually be also processors, roasters, or should we specialize and actually innovate and be better farmers? That's a debate, Mr. Chair, for another day, and I think we need to really dive down in discussing some of these issues. But having said this, Mr. Chair, I think there are many issues that have come to the fore that I could respond to. I will restrict myself to about 5 issues. One, the national coffee policy that again was spearheaded by one of us on the table, Mr. Nukafe, has touched many of the aspects we are actually discussing today. We have talked about the good breeds, which give us creative value. Thank you, Mr. Mugoya. Those good breeds, the good agricultural practices, is part of the principles of the national policy, 2013. But also that's what brought out actually the National Coffee Research Institute to be in existence. We are also talking about the coffee and other products. That requires a lot of research. And I think research is at the center of all of these things we are doing here. Then we have to look at if we are going to be very competitive, whether we are marketing our coffee, we have to focus again also on the regulations. Regulations is at the center, because without regulations, we are not going to have the good quality coffee. As we talk about regulations, we are actually talking also about domestic coffee consumption, where the new law is going to be addressing a good cup of coffee at the table, and the HoReCa, the hotel, restaurants, cafes have to come also to under regulations. We are also talking of coffee tourism. That's the relationship again with the HoReCa. As a government, we are focusing on how we can bring more value to the farmer. Can we, and some areas we see some of the farmers actually having the stay-ins, tourists coming in to stay on the farm. The more they stay there, the more they drink a cup of coffee, or at least get that experiential learning. Mr. Chair, what we have not discussed much more here is actually the curriculum. We have many tertiary institutions, both private and public, where our graduates come out. Coffee is the #1 commodity, not because we are discussing about coffee here, but we also know we've gone to school because of coffee. We remember the Manyezabar of the massacre of those days. I think the boom is coming now. We have the highest price since 2011, and I think we should take advantage of this. But how have we prepared our graduates? If Mr. Nkando is in the office here much as it's a farmer, down there at his farm, who is actually managing the farm? We shouldn't be looking at farming as a past activity where we go drive over the weekend. We need to professionalize farming, and I want to thank my colleague here, Mr. Tony Mugoya. We have now a guide, we have large-scale coffee farmers. We have to get these curriculums so that these farmers actually have farm managers who are professionals. Most of the farms we are having here, suffice to say, including those who are in cattle ranching, the farmers actually, the farm managers are from either Kenya or Zimbabwe. So can we think about farming as a business, and then we look at farm managers who are actually looking at that space? And I think as a government, it's a challenge we have. We have to get not just the Makerere University, Chambogo, name it. We have also to look at Bukarasa. We have to be, Kawere has taken the lead of training farm senior 4 rivers for 6 months. But that's, to me, not enough. Do we have farm planning? The agriculture engineers we have, they come in the space, but if I want to plant coffee, who actually guides me that in these 50 acres you have to have where you are going to do the processing, projections, how you are going to do irrigation, how you are going to do the transportation, all those relations. These are all missing, and I think as the stakeholders we need to come to the fore about this discussion. Branding, to me, is really the area we have to look at as we do the value addition. We have, as I mentioned, about the feasibility study we are doing on the soluble coffee plant, but how are we going to market this coffee? The first thing, and sometimes we are taken back when you say, I'm from Uganda. Where is Uganda? Near Cameroon, near Nigeria. So before we even market our coffee, we need to first market our country. Unfortunately, I think we have somebody from Ministry of Finance. When we are talking about branding, these are usually consumptive activities categorized. You are going to travel, they think about per diem, but there is no thinking about that you are actually marketing Ugandan coffee. You are having the flag of Ugandan coffee, and our products are not going to get anywhere unless they are brought closer to the. But also COVID brought in some actually positives. As a government and as UCDA, we are working on an online marketing platform where we don't necessarily have to travel, and this is a platform which is also going to be available, of course, for the private sector. so that we actually get these products. Our youth get there, they take advantage of the internet connection. But lastly, Mr. Chair, as we talk about branding, intellectual property rights, the geographical indication systems is very, very key. And also the coffee law now provides for the issue of farmer registration. And I hope we have sobered all of us that really farmer registration is good for planning, it's good for marketing, collective marketing, but also if you want to market your product. Consumers are looking at how this product was produced, how it was handled, how it was along the whole value chain. Mr. Chair, as I talk about the branding, the issue of culture actually comes in, and that's where you have everybody talked about the partnerships. Sometimes we think, yes, I have to take this product to China, to Russia, to United States. The feel they have is really based on how their culture is. And I want to applaud one of our own, Endiro Coffee, and of course there are many others, where they say, yes, we are in Uganda, but we have to have somebody who understands the culture of United States, and how we can have this branding that product actually as Uganda, but putting in perspective of the consumers, the culture there. And I think I have not meant indeed to brand only Indiro. There are other off-takers who are doing this, and I want to encourage many of them to do the same. Mr. Chair, as you put a challenge to us, the coffee talk, and I think I would like to have an assignment here. I have my board member who is actually representing roasters here. I think we should put in perspective and say, what can we do in these seminars? Can we have one of really branding and bring people from other countries, from within the region? I think there is a talk from many of the youth, a lot of innovation they can bring, so that we really focus on a seminar which is just branding, where we are talking about roasting. And I think at this level, we would bring in many experts, including government officials, policymakers, so that the voice of the different stakeholders is brought at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, MD. Yes, a round of applause to the MD. We are winding up. I don't know whether each of the panelists can, just in one sentence, tell us what words of wisdom do you give us as we close? Beginning with Mr. Mugoya.
Thank you. I think we have a meeting of minds on many things, so let's implement what we say. Thank you.
Mrs. Wandera.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think mine is just for all of us to realize that value addition is all over the entire value chain, and all actors should actually focus on value addition at whatever value chain you are working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nkandu.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and the audience, it is important that we need to have a system change approach. We need to have our policies implemented. We need to do things different from what we have done before. Let the farmer take ownership and integrate in the value chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nkandu. Mr. MD, you have the last card. I know you have spoken a lot, but give us your last word, and then we'll ask the master or director of ceremony to take over.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate all the speakers. I actually believe that we have not done much justice on this by rotating this time. Missing 3 things here, which probably in the next we should focus on. Our researchers are doing a lot of work, and it's in such a forum that actually this voice would be heard, because they seem to be seen as people who are only agronomists. There is a lot of value addition products which is available, and this is where the off-takers would actually look at some of those products on the shelf to take them to another level. Secondly, Uganda is one of the countries with the highest youth population, and I think we should be listening to the voice of these young men and women. And I want to thank the organizers of the last agricultural awards scheme, where one of our own, Barista House, actually came top to be recognized. So these innovations in value addition, the youth needs to be brought on board, and we hear what innovation they want to bring in this. Joseph said his lecturer at the time of the university may not be knowing capping. I worked in UCDA in 1998. I didn't know that there was capping. 2022, we are having, so there are so many innovations coming on the floor, and I think it's high time we bring them in. The last but not least, all these dreams we are talking about, they require enabling environment. There is the law, but also very importantly, financing. And I want to thank the development partners who are in the Middle East. Please do more, because without the financing, the Ugandans will be exporting our value, will not realize our own value. The ownership model we are talking about will not be realized without the enabling environment. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. MD. I don't want to say much. I just want to hand over to the director. Hopefully that Mukutano and UCDA will organize another meeting just for coffee, and then we can talk until the cows come home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daktari. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.